Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another one-man review. Today I've got the new Amazing Screw-On Head and Other Curious Objects 20th Anniversary Library Edition, hardcover edition. This was a Mike Mignola one-shot comic that's been collected with a bunch of other short stories and cool ephemera. Obviously colored by Dave Stewart. If you're getting a Mike Mignola, you're getting some awesome Dave Stewart coloring. So a typical Dark Horse like hardcover production. Really nice glossy paper. With Mignola, I almost want to see it on like a matte paper since his stuff feels like old and pulpy to me. But with how dark some of the colors get, I don't think it would look good on that type of paper. I think you would lose things into the black and the color would merge sometimes. So I think it's a right choice to go with Dave Stewart's using these really dark colors to go on bright paper. I think you would have to lighten the colors purposely. So all of the stories in this book are like probably the most Mignola stuff ever, and he says that as well, that this is like the purest look into his head. And I think that's what makes it cool, and it's also what makes it frustrating. And I realize that like I don't really like Mignola as a writer so much, but his art propels everything along in a way that has always made me accept it. But when I see him writing for other people, I don't like it as much because he has this real kind of, especially in his purest form, it seems like he's just making it up panel by panel, and it's also goofy and silly, and his art is really what sells it. And that's kind of Amazing Screw-On Head, is like Abraham Lincoln calls this robot, and the robot goes off and fights some big frog creature, skeleton, demon, typical Mike Mignola stuff. He's very consistent. And personally, I would get bored if I was so consistent, but then I always feel like my sketches that I do are very consistent and people always like them, and it's like, well, do something that. But to me, it's so predictable that I can't bring myself to do something. But then I look at an artist like Mignola that is so predictable and so singular, and I always wish I could be that. And I don't know, I think he's like a crux artist for me in that sense, that I'm trying to, like I wish I had an identifiable thing like him, but the identifiable thing I have just feels too predictable to me. And so I'm always in awe of Mignola, that he's just let himself be himself. And I think that's why we all love his work so much. Here we have this, here you see, like, I think Mignola really at his best, which is the absurdity of it all. And that's why I was saying it kind of feels like he's just making it up as he goes, and sometimes that's cool and sometimes it's nonsense. But they've got like this turnip that has another dimension in it, and this big Lovecraftian frog god comes out of it. And I just love this moment, the absurdity of this thing coming out of a turnip, and then this here where like the vampire lady's like, oh shit, poof, I'm getting out of here. It's just such a good like visual joke, and I think that this page is like Mignola at his absolute best. All of the horrific dark stuff combined with that like goofy sense of humor stuff popping out of a turnip. In this first story, I think they didn't have files big enough to actually print this well. Like the stuff that's in the color looks good, but when you actually see the lettering and the edges of the line, they look pretty pixelated. And so I wonder if they just didn't have access to the original art or whatever, because in the rest of the book, the lettering is like nice and crisp and looks like it's treated like line art. But here it's all like half-toned and I can see the dots. And so that was a bit disappointing, especially on an image like this. But in the rest of the book, that's solved. So yeah, I don't know what was going on with that. I think they're just working with their best resources that they've got. And then it's just a bunch of short stories. Abu Gung and the Beanstalk. I really like. He said he was cursed with an eventful life. I've had a very eventful last couple years, and I feel super blessed for it. But there are many days when Tori and I talk about like, oh my God, we're just so tired, and we want to like complain about how worn out we are. But it's all been good stuff. So I get that, cursed with an eventful life. That's pretty funny. And then, I put, yeah, the reason I'd stuck a note on this is there's like this old witch lady, and she's excited that what's his name, Abu Gung comes in with the potato, and it said, oh, it's been so long since we've had that here. We only eat broken furniture and cobwebs. And that cracked me up because me and my friend Lorgan had taken a trip in the summer of 2010 to I wanted to check out an art program at MIT. I was already in grad school and I was considering doing a second MFA in a combination of art and technology. I don't know why, that was stupid, but we went to Massachusetts and we were trying to find a grocery store around the hotel that we were in, and we could not find grocery store or a restaurant or anything. It was just so hard. And so we started joking that like that everyone in Massachusetts just eats doilies and old furniture and just farts out cobwebs and dust. And so to have this here, we only eat broken furniture and cobwebs. And Mike Mignola's stuff has that Lovecraft vibe, which is so like the saturated history of, you know, New England, the upper East Coast of the United States. It's like, I don't know what it is about that area, but it seems like we're not the only one that got the vibe that people eat broken furniture and doilies for lunch. So that tickled me quite a bit. I know I've read the Amazing Screw-On Head. I had that when it came out, but I don't remember these other stories if they were in there or not. I don't remember all of them. This one's really charming. And it's funny because it's supposedly written by his daughter at age 7, but it feels about as sensible as any other Mignola story, and that's where you have to respect him. If he's got that like archetypal child logic where he just goes with it, but it seems to add up to something. So that was funny. I think that was cute, but this story makes absolutely no sense. But he turns it into, you know, it's Mignola. It's amazing. The Witch in Her Soul is another one that's in there. It's really, really cool. Prisoner of Mars. This one definitely has the Mignola, like he's just every page is a new idea. And with all of the manga that I've been looking at that's super decompressed, it's almost jarring to go to someone who writes so compressed. It was like, I got a message and then I went out and found this thing and it was a squid and then the squid ate my brain and then I got hung and then my soul went to Mars and then I got put into a robot squid creature. And you know, it's like, if this was a manga, this would be 300 issues. And you know, it's for Mignola, it's like every 20 issues is one page. And you know, I keep talking about that compression and decompression. So it's good to go back to something so compressed. And I think that comes out of his love for the pulp stuff, the H.P. Lovecraft pulp stuff that he grew up on. Those are always short stories that cover a lot of fantastic ground really quick. And I think this one right here, this what was it called, The Prisoner of Mars, is probably the best example of that in this book, and maybe of all his work, because Hellboy's more like a larger story that he's telling. And I'll love that he'll do something like this. He'll put the end, and then he'll have one more panel, just like an illustration on the end of it. This takes that to this story in the Chapel of Curious Objects takes that to an extreme. There's no story here. It's just a pan through this chapel of puppets, and he talks in the back about he wanted to keep going with this story because he had all these we'll look at the sketches eventually, but he had all these sketches for puppets and he just wanted to pan through the puppets for longer. And I kind of wish he did. He was worried that the readers wouldn't follow him through it, but as an experiment, like if you're gonna go into, I'm just gonna have a silent pan through something, like go for it. I think it was his sensibility for compression that kept him from doing that. And then interestingly, he pans in on the wizard and the snake and opens it up, and it's got these geometrical objects in there, which were part of the story that he wrote with his daughter. So he's always kind of re-mythologizing his own stuff, which obviously makes the Mignolaverse the interesting thing that it is. Part 3 of this is new 20th anniversary bonus curiosities. So it's a bunch of sketches he's done over the year. It's like a colored sketchbook, a finished sketchbook. So, you know, that's cool. I as a lover of narrative, prefer the narrative stuff, but his compositions are always so compelling. And then I think most exciting in this book is this unfinished work, Axor, Slayer of Demons. And this, it looks like, has been prepared right. It doesn't look like it's all pixelated and stuff, or it's at least a much finer halftone on this. So this is really cool. And There's things that are lettered, there's word balloons, but he says in the kind of the outro to this that he didn't know how to script it and end it. So I think this would have got extra lettering on it. So it's interesting to see that sometimes he'll actually drop like some lettering in here. Like I guess it's just sound effects, gasp, hack, choke, but then the dialogue would have been done digitally, I guess. So it's fun, like to try and, especially because a lot of the times he just focuses on little parts of a room or whatever. This kind of aspects of the scene that build up like symbolism. It's not really sequential in the same sense, which has been super influential to me. Before I looked at manga, I was looking at the way Mignola would kind of do these little insets, and that was very influential to me and still is, this kind of myopic focus on parts of a scene. So it's interesting to be able to read a whole story like that where it's not being led by the dialogue. You kind of just see his art unfolding. So I think, and I'm glad they didn't have Dave Stewart go color it. I'm glad they left it like as is, because it's not finished. So it's cool to see his stuff in black and white. Of all the artists that have artist editions, Mignola is probably the least interesting to me, because although his composition and like the way that he came to his style is so particular, it winds up being fairly easy to break down from like a how he done it standpoint. It's just how he done it in terms of arriving to the vision he got to is fascinating. But I don't think there's much to be learned from like an artist edition version. It's like get a thin line pen and then fill it in with black. It's his compositional ability and his ability to abstract that really does the work. And so it's nice to see it adjusted and just in black and white. I think that's cool. And then the sketchbook, I mean, this is pretty standard stuff for collected editions, but as art geeks, we always love seeing the sketches, and it's nice to see. I think, I at least get fooled when I looked at Mignola's stuff that he's gotten so comfortable with this style, he can kind of just sit down and make it up as he goes, that it just flows out of him. But it's nice to see him. I mean, it obviously flows out of him pretty easily, but it's nice to see him doing some scribbling and scratching and thumbnailing and stuff like that. It makes me feel, a little bit better about myself. And here's where he's talking about, he had all these other puppet designs that he was in love with, and he wanted to put them in the book. So yeah, I'm really glad I bought this. I eventually want to get all the Hellboy stuff. It's just one of those things where those were out before I started buying books, and I just don't let myself go back. But I would love to have all of Mignola's stuff in hardcover like this. I used to have them all in trade paperbacks and gave them away. And now that we got these nice editions, I would love to get those, and the BPRD stuff too. A lot of great art in those. I feel like they should have shuttered the Mignola-verse, probably. The stuff that I've seen coming out more recently, it has that writing style, but then the art's just not some of the art's great, but some of the people doing the art now just don't have the vibe that I love from the Mignola stuff. So, but I do want a collected edition of all, like, the original mythology of it all. I think is really, really beautiful Apex comic stuff. So I'm glad to have my first edition in that library finally, and if you can afford it, I would highly recommend it. One of the best ways that you can support what we're doing here on the channel is to support the books that Sean's putting out through Living the Line. The first book that he put out is The Strange Death of Alex Raymond. It's a collaboration between Dave Sim and myself. The book was recently nominated for an Eisner Award in the Best Reality-Based category. It's a deep dive into the artwork and methods of Alex Raymond and the mystery surrounding his death in a car crash. So if you haven't grabbed that already, please do. There's also Yokoyama Yuichi's Plaza, which is a totally intense manga by an artist who has somehow figured out how to distill manga down to its purest essence. This book was successfully funded on Kickstarter, but if you missed the Kickstarter, you can order it through any comic store, any bookstore, Amazon, any place that you would normally get your graphic novels from. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.